And the central thesis here is, well, it's a game changer. Because the vast majority of digital failures, they don't start with some malicious external attack. They begin internally.
Through neglect.
Through slow, quiet, rationalized neglect. It's not external hacking. It's more like internal entropy.
Let's unpack that. That means the risk is basically invisible. It's totally silent.
Right up until the moment of catastrophic failure.
Yeah, that's when that sinking feeling hits and the whole difficult, embarrassing process of recovery starts. You just don't get daily reminders that your old accounts are, rotting away.
You don't.
So I want to ask you, our listener, a question. Have you ever had that sinking, terrifying moment when a digital service you ignored for months, maybe even years?
Like an old cloud drive or an email you abandoned?
Exactly. Or some old project management tool, and it suddenly fails spectacularly, or you realize it's been compromised.
It's a horrible feeling.
It is. We want to hear your stories. Go ahead and leave your experiences in the comments below.
That specific moment of realization is so jarring because it just violently clashes with our deeply ingrained expectation of how these things are supposed to work.
Right. Let's contrast that. The typical expectation versus the hard reality of digital decay.
Okay.
We've been conditioned by movies, by news headlines, to expect failure as this single, clear, dramatic event.
A big red warning signal.
A big red warning, a breach alert notification.
Yeah.
A clear moment of attack that gives you time to scramble and react. That's the model we're all looking for.
But the reality check is, it's so much more subtle. And because of that, it's so much more dangerous.
What actually happens then?
What happens is a gradual accumulation of risk. We could call it silent entropy. You get this quiet, continuous exposure, but with no feedback loop at all.
And at the same time, I assume, you have this invisible growth of old dependencies, permissions you completely forgot you granted.
For sure. And a silent deterioration in how relevant your security settings even are anymore.
So the key insight here really is that digital systems don't fail loudly.
They fail silently first.
And that's a psychological problem, fundamentally.
Yeah.
I mean, how are you supposed to manage and prioritize something that gives you zero negative feedback?
It's so true. If I skip the gym, I feel sluggish.
Right. Or if I ignore my car maintenance, the check engine light comes on.
Exactly. But if I ignore the maintenance on a server or a 10-year-old social media account,
the system does nothing.
It does worse than nothing. It actively rewards your inaction with silence.
And that lack of immediate consequence, that's not an accident, is it? It's sort of a design feature of convenience.
It is. Our systems are engineered to hide the friction. So we assume safety, and that just reinforces the neglect cycle over and over again.
Which brings us right into the core mechanism of this silent accumulation. When we think of physical things, they show wear and tear. A house needs painting, a path gets overgrown. We see it happening.
That physical analogy just completely fails in the digital world. There's no visual degradation.
Digital systems don't collect dust.
They don't look worn down, and their interface probably gets updated to look pristine and modern, even if the code underneath is a decade old and held together with, duct tape and legacy code.
That cosmetic cleanliness, it reinforces that feeling of safety. It's worse than just no dust. Modern design actively works against you seeing the decay.
Exactly. And this enables risk without feedback. The exposure just compounds invisibly because there are no warning signals.
So the vulnerability you introduced 6 months ago, like granting some third-party app access to your drive?
Right. That could now be 10 times worse because that third party got bought or their security model failed, and you would have no idea.
And this is where it gets really interesting for me. Convenience actively masks the risk. Easy access, seamless integration.
All those smooth user interfaces, they're designed specifically to hide the underlying mess. They remove the very resistance that might force us to confront the problem.
That's why that storage unit analogy from the source material is just so powerful.
It's perfect. Think of digital neglect like a physical storage unit you rent. You just keep adding boxes, data, accounts, permissions, but you never actually open the door.
You just assume it's fine in there. Nothing smells bad, no leaks, you don't hear a crash from inside. You forget what's even in there, but you keep paying the fee.
And time plus inattention is the silent multiplier for that risk.
That unit could be packed with expired, vulnerable, or sensitive items, or just junk.
But until you open that door, it just looks like a perfectly neat steel box in your digital life. The illusion is maintained.
And this illusion is helped along by, 3 key modern realities that make all this digital clutter feel harmless?
Yeah. First, storage is cheap. It's so cheap. Cloud storage costs have just plummeted, and that removes the economic pressure to clean up.
That's a huge behavioral shift. If you had to pay, say, $100 a month per gigabyte, your digital life would look radically different.
Totally. But because it's pennies, the cost of neglect isn't monetary right now. It's potential. It's administrative debt.
Okay, what's the second factor?
The interface. Like we said, modern design hides complexity. You log into an app, it shows you a few recent files on a clean dashboard.
It doesn't show you the petabytes of legacy data hiding in folders you haven't touched in 5 years.
Never. So this visual hygiene makes the system feel safe, even if it's a disaster under the hood.
And the third factor, and this one is probably the most insidious, is performance. Unlike a physical system that gets clogged, digital clutter usually doesn't cause a visible slowdown. If nothing slows down, your brain just marks it as safe, low priority.
Right. Digital clutter doesn't punish you for storing it now. It punishes you later.
When access or context or ownership changes?
Exactly. Or when a security incident forces you to finally confront the sprawl. And that's when you realize the one document you needed is buried under 1,000 forgotten files.
So if the accumulation of clutter is one threat, what about just inaction? Specifically with old services. Let's dive into that illusion of dormancy. This is where our internal logic just completely breaks down.
Oh, it really does. We use this pervasive internal logic to rationalize ignoring old accounts,
We tell ourselves things like, I am not actively using it.
which our brain translates to "it's safe" or "nothing bad happened last time I forgot about it," which just reinforces the belief that it's a zero-risk situation.
It's like because we aren't engaging with it, we think the threat level drops to zero. Like turning off an oven. We turn away, we assume the system shuts down too.
But the reality check is brutal. Dormancy is deceptive because digital systems do not forget the way we do. Your old accounts are still active, still accessible, and potentially exposed.
This is the critical insight we need to hammer home. Inactive does not mean inaccessible. Can you talk a bit about the technical side of that? Why don't they just evaporate?
Well, credentials persist. Authentication protocols are designed for permanence. Permissions remain because even if your password expires, the access tokens you granted to third-party apps, they can often refresh themselves silently, or they might not have expiration dates at all. And of course, the data stays indexed. Databases are built to maintain records even if they're flagged as inactive.
So even if I haven't logged into some old e-commerce site in 7 years, the system still has my identity, my data, just sitting there waiting for entropy to hit.
Precisely. And this idea, it extends to things we do intentionally, like sharing files. We use settings like anyone with the link can view without really thinking about it.
What are the flawed assumptions there?
Well, the first is that sharing feels intentional, which gives you this strong but often false sense of control. You think you know exactly who has the link.
The second is that links feel temporary. We just assume they'll be forgotten eventually.
And the third is that visibility feels controlled, limited only to who you sent it to.
I think we all fall for that sense of temporariness. I'll send a link and, 2 weeks later, I forgot I even shared it, and I assume it's just vanished back into my secure world.
But the erosion of control is quiet, and it's constant. Search engines can index public links. Access persists way beyond your memory. The risk isn't the link itself, it's the assumption of control you cling to, even as that link is getting copied, forwarded, and archived everywhere.
So the control just erodes quietly in the background. It's impossible to audit later. And if you connect all these things, the cheap storage, the clean interface, the persistent credentials,
You get a massive systemic blind spot for the user. It creates a situation where the most secure digital life is almost always the smallest, least cluttered one. But we're designed by convenience to go in the exact opposite direction.
which leads us to the behavioral side of this, why we actively ignore the cleanup. First, though, if you are finding these detailed analyses useful and you want to stay ahead of the curve, pause for just a moment. Please subscribe to the YouTube NCWEBDE channel. We're constantly dropping new content, and you won't want to miss our future deep dives.
Okay, so moving into solutions, we have to talk about the human factor. Why do we postpone this even when we know the risk?
Well, the research says this isn't really carelessness. It's a very human response to systems that are optimized to hide decay. Like you said, we're wired to react to pain, to discomfort, to immediate feedback.
And if the system hides the pain, we just deprioritize the task. This leads directly to a set of really common but destructive rationalizations.
Let's run through them because I think everyone listening has used at least one. The first is just pure procrastination. I'll do it later when I have more time.
Which is never. Or the minimization of risk. It's just temporary, not worth the effort now. And that temporary thing becomes a permanent exposure.
Then there's the illusion of competence. I know where everything is, so it's organized enough.
Which really means it's only organized for you, based on years of context that no one else has.
And the ultimate one, which really sums it all up. Nothing's broken, so why fix it?
And the answer is just so simple. Because fixing it after it breaks is exponentially more expensive and painful than fixing it while it's just decaying silently.
Which is why maintenance exists. We had to shift from reactive damage control to proactive prevention.
The sources all emphasize that regular, predictable, scheduled review beats reactive cleanup every single time. It builds a routine.
And this isn't about buying more fancy software.
No, the real power is in boundaries over tools. Clear rules and limits, like a maximum file retention period or an audit of permissions every quarter, that matters so much more than any AI-powered cleaner you can download.
Because the software cleaned the surface. The boundaries define the structure. They limit where clutter can even accumulate in the first place.
That's the core of prevention by design, and we have to admit, prevention feels boring.
It does.
And we have to embrace that. It feels boring because the whole goal of maintenance is to prevent the drama and the urgency that our brains actually crave.
So if the goal isn't perfection, because that's impossible,
Yeah.
what is the actual measurable goal of maintenance?
It's visibility. That's it. Maintenance is about reducing unknowns. It's about creating a clear, simple map of what you actually have, where it lives, and who can access it. If you can see the sprawl, you can control it.
Visibility, not perfection. That feels like a sustainable goal for anyone.
Absolutely. And as we wrap up, we have to talk about the final insidious trap. These systems are incredibly patient.
They don't punish you immediately, so it's easy to just accommodate inaction.
They record everything. Every permission, every share, every credential is a permanent record. And they simply wait for a moment of vulnerability.
So what does this all mean then? When something finally feels wrong, when you notice the problem, the exposure is already real, and the difficult recovery process has already started.
The problem wasn't some sudden breach. It was the slow accumulation of things you didn't manage. Digital neglect isn't dramatic. That's why it works and why it's so easy to miss. It accumulates in the background, justified by reasonable human logic and enabled by our overwhelming preference for convenience over constraint. Continue exploring these ideas in our ongoing playlist. Next episode drops Wednesday.